welcome back to the Deep Dive. So if you've ever been part of any kind of community, a church, a team, even just a close-knit family, you've probably wrestled with this. This tension we're going to unpack today, it's the gap between the community you want, the idealized one, and the difficult, complicated people you actually know.
It's so true. And that tension is really at the heart of the sources we're looking at for this deep dive. We're digging into a pastoral reflection from Pastor Huzi Kang.
Right.
And it's all rooted in 2 Corinthians, where the Apostle Paul is dealing with some really intense conflict in the church.
And the source material just frames this perfectly with a quote from Warren Wiersbe.
Oh, that quote is fantastic.
Isn't it? He says something like, it's glorious to think about living with all the beloved saints up in heaven.
Sure. The ideal.
But living with the saints we know, right here, right now.
He says that's another matter.
Exactly. Another matter entirely.
Yeah. And that's our mission today. We want to get into the messy reality of what it takes to keep a community healthy, not just spiritually, but, organizationally, emotionally.
We're going to unpack Paul's blueprint for dealing with conflict with compassion.
And then we're going to contrast that with Pastor Hugh's 35 years of really boots-on-the-ground ministry. The big question for you, listening, is how do we balance love and forgiveness with the absolute need for order?
And this is the really interesting part. Why did the sources say that if you fail to maintain that order, you're letting Satan take advantage of us?
It's a powerful idea.
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's start with Paul's model. We're calling this first part authority, compassion, and necessary pain.
So when Paul was writing to the church in Corinth, we have to remember this was not some small disagreement.
No.
This was a full-blown crisis. It involved a specific person in the church who had caused him deep, deep personal pain.
And the sources are a bit ambiguous on who exactly this was, right?
Yeah, they are. It's not totally clear. Was it the man he wrote about in 1 Corinthians, the one in an incestuous relationship? Or was it maybe someone else who was just openly challenging his apostolic authority?
His Shin Tu Quan Bi.
Exactly, his fundamental right to lead.
And whatever it was bad. Bad enough that he'd made this, rushed visit that didn't solve anything.
Right, a painful visit. And then he writes this letter of pain, which he references later. The situation was clearly spiraling.
So here's the fascinating part, the choice he makes. He's an apostle.
He is. He has all the authority, the Quan Being he could possibly need. He could have just laid down the law, demanded respect, demanded obedience.
Played the authority card. End of story.
But he doesn't, and the sources really emphasize this. He chooses a much, much harder path.
Love and patience.
Enduring love and patience, He puts the long-term health of the congregation ahead of his own need to be right or to feel vindicated.
Which raises a huge leadership question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you're under attack and you choose patience over authority, don't you risk looking weak, losing more credibility?
That's the tightrope walk. You absolutely do. But the source suggests Paul understood something profound.
That true love sometimes has to be painful.
Yes. It requires confrontation that feels awful in the moment. And this connects so perfectly to the analogy Pastor Hugh uses from his own childhood.
The one about parental discipline.
Yeah. He talks about hating it at the time, of course.
Yeah.
What kid doesn't? But looking back, he realized his parents weren't acting out of anger.
It was protective love.
A deep protective love. They were willing to make him upset, make him angry, if it meant stopping him from doing something that would cause lasting harm.
There's that quote that's just devastating. This thing makes us sadder than you.
Right. And that's the key. If a leader has to enforce discipline, they have to somehow communicate that the pain is shared, that it comes from a place of sorrow for the situation, not from personal ego or rage.
Because if you don't, it just looks like punishment.
And then you can't get to the forgiveness and the healing that has to come after. The takeaway here is that real compassion is about the long game, even if it means choosing a really difficult path right now.
So that's the scriptural model, this idea of long-suffering constructive love. Now let's see how that holds up against decades of real-world pressure. Let's pivot to section 2.
This is where we shift to Pastor Hu's own ministry. We're talking 35 years.
A long time.
A very long time. All at one place, Beipu Church in Hualien, Taiwan. It's a rural area, what the source calls Piangxin.
And in a context like that, every challenge is just amplified by scarcity.
For sure. He says he gets asked all the time why he stays there. Why not go to a big city church with more resources, more staff?
And his answer really gets into the nature of the community itself. He describes his congregation as, resource scarce. maybe lower academic background.
And he says they have a certain simplicity, Danshun.
And this idea of simplicity is where the source offers a really sharp insight. It's not all positive.
Not at all. It's a double-edged sword. On one hand, simplicity can mean a pure heart, a genuine, uncomplicated faith. That's the good side.
Yeah.
But, as the pastor notes, in an area that's deficient in resources, in education, in organizational capacity, that same simplicity may also be a form of mediocrity.
Wow. That is a really challenging thought. It's saying that scarcity isn't just about a lack of money.
Exactly. It can limit the whole group's ability to handle complexity, to adapt, to grow. It can even create a kind of resistance to professional standards, even when they're desperately needed.
And if the whole congregation operates with that kind of simplicity, the burden on the leader becomes immense.
Immense. He describes his role as being the principal and janitor, Gong. He has to do it all. The high-level vision, the strategic planning, but also the day-to-day grunt work.
All because there's a shortage of qualified people to help carry the load.
And that context, as you said, changes everything. In a small, family-like community, conflict isn't abstract. It's personal. It's like a family feud.
And the emotional drain on the one person trying to hold it all together must be just incredible. You can't delegate it. You can't ignore it.
Which is why the pastor says, look, he can't choose his flock. They are who God is giving him. But what he must do is manage his own emotions and, above all, maintain order.
He needs clear, objective boundaries that are based on truth, says.
Yes. Not on feelings, not on who likes whom, but on truth. Which brings us right into section 3. What those boundaries actually look like in practice.
Okay, so maintaining order and defining boundaries. When the pressure is this high, where does the disorder actually come from?
The sources point to 3 specific areas where you need firm, clear intervention. Not emotional hand-wringing, but rules based on truth.
What's the first one?
Financial disloyalty. This is a hard line. Anyone who is unfaithful with the community's money has to be removed from that role, period.
The wording in the source is pretty blunt. It says they must be put far away from managing this post.
It's totally non-negotiable.
But in a small community where everyone is related or has known each other for years, how do you actually do that without blowing the whole place up?
I think the implication is that you have to stand on the truth so clearly that the majority of the community understands why it's necessary. It's about protecting the integrity of the whole, even if it causes a short-term split.
Okay, so finance is number 1. What's 2?
The second is around relationships and morality. Specifically, inappropriate relationships between men and women. Again, the community has to hold people accountable and demand that they exercise caution to prevent wider damage.
And the third one feels very relevant to any workplace, really.
It really does. It's the abuse of power or emotion. This is about people who use their feelings or maybe their seniority to constantly criticize the pastor or their co-workers.
And the leadership's job is to stand up and clearly state the organization's position against that kind of destructive behavior.
The big insight here is that conflict is going to happen. You can't wish it away. So the real test of leadership isn't avoiding fights. It's standing firm on the truth when they happen to make sure the organization itself survives the turmoil.
And this idea of conflict, it's not just seen as a human problem in the source material, is it? It's connected to something bigger.
It is, which takes us to section 4, and this link between interpersonal struggle and what the source would call a spiritual dimension.
So how does a regular human conflict and renji chumtu becomes something more, something that opens the door to a spiritual attack?
Well, the reflection is very explicit about this. It says that darkness, or Satan, uses our existing tensions, our ego, our desire for power, to stir up even more trouble.
And it gets really specific about the kinds of behaviors that cause that trouble, like people overvaluing their power, their quanli.
Yes, and that other phrase, yi mei mei lane.
Let's unpack that. What does that mean practically?
It roughly means relying on old age and selling old knowledge. Picture someone in a meeting who says, look, I've been here for 30 years. We tried that 20 years ago and it failed. You young people need to respect my experience.
They're using their seniority as a weapon to shut down new ideas.
Exactly. It's not about sharing wisdom. It's about asserting dominance and criticizing just for the sake of it.
And if you're constantly dealing with that, you check out, you disengage.
Which leads to this really sharp observation the pastor makes about avoidance. He says people often avoid confronting these difficult individuals not because they're scared, but because they know that person's personality.
They know it's a waste of time.
Right.
The fight won't go anywhere productive. It's just self-preservation.
Right. And that choice to avoid leads the source to contrast two kinds of friends. First, you have the good friends, the hegyu.
The people who are like-minded, upright, optimistic. The ones who bring a positive energy.
Yes, the source says to welcome them, whether they're Christian or not, because they bring a good atmosphere.
And then you have the other kind?
The harmful friends, or sinning. The ones who are always finding fault. The chimokiki. The arrogant ones. The energy vampires.
And the advice for them is pretty stark.
Just detour around them. Ralu ersi.
Which is fascinating because it seems to contradict the Pauline model of loving confrontation.
It does. It acknowledges that some battles just aren't worth fighting, that sometimes personal avoidance is the only sane option, but there's a huge warning sign in all this.
And what's that?
The pastor says the biggest problem for any group is when people fall silent, when they're no longer even willing to engage with you. That silence, that's when you know the toxicity has won.
That silence is the sound of a community dying. It really brings us back around to our conclusion, to the idea of what it means to be one of these saints we know.
Yeah, the reflection ends by redefining saint. It says it doesn't mean perfect holiness, not Kwanran de Wan Kwan de Shangje.
So what does it mean?
It means they are defined by their commitment to trying every day to act according to God's truth yusha shangdi de zendling. It's about how they conduct themselves within the necessary order of the community.
The mandate is pretty clear then. The goal is for light to arrive and for darkness to depart. You can't let individual egos or disorder wreck the structure that keeps the whole community safe.
And I love the final note Pastor Hu makes. He was writing this when it was cold in Taiwan.
Right.
And he connects that to relational warmth. He says, our job is to actively bring more love and more warmth into our workplaces, into our families, to be that source of light ourselves.
To be the person who both engages with love, but also knows when to set a firm boundary. We've covered Paul's model, the intense cost of leadership in these tough environments, and the absolute need for order.
Which all comes back to that final tension we want to leave you with. It's the one we started with. On the one hand, you have this very practical advice. Just detour around a harmful person to protect yourself.
Right, because you know their personality is toxic.
But on the other hand, we have Paul's example of choosing the incredibly painful path of love and patience to confront a difficult person head-on for the good of the whole community.
So as you go about your week, navigating the saints in your own life, what's the practical difference? If you have to stand on truth to maintain order, when is avoidance just necessary for your own sanity? And when does detouring around someone actually compromise the health and the order of the entire group?
It's a constant, difficult balancing act, protecting yourself versus protecting the collective.
Definitely something to think about as you bring some of that warmth and light to your own space this week.
For sure.
We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.